In chapter 10 and 11, we learned about the basics of capital budgeting. And here in the international background, we're still using the same method to calculate the project's NPV based on the cash flows generated from this project from year zero all the way to the last year. So the cash flow here are free cash flows. The TV stands for terminal value, and the C0 is your initial capital investment or the capital expenditure. K stands for the weighted average cost of capital or the discount rate for the cash flows. You can also expand it, and you can see the free cash flows could be made of operating cash flow times 1 minus tax rate, and you also need to add back depreciations and also the inventory changes and so on. Since this has already been covered in previous chapters, I'm not going to do it again here. But I really want to show you how to solve for the NPV when you are given different kind of currencies. Instead of dollars, you are working on euros or British pounds or Japanese yen. And let's see right here, we have a multinational corporation, and this is an American company. It has a European business, and this is the initial investment for the European business. That's the 600 euros, and then you're going to receive positive cash flow in the next 3 years. In the first year is 200 euros, followed by 500 euros in the second year, and then 300 euros in the last year. Since this is an American company, then the way it finances is based on the domestic sources. So the interest rate we're going to use for cost of capital is an American rate. All right, the company borrows money from its domestic bank or issuing public bonds or stocks in the U.S. market. So we're going to use the U.S. rate to calculate the cost of capital. And this is already given here. Well, what is complicated is sometimes you may need to convert this based on into a euro rate. All right, since this is a European company, since this is a European project, then we need to consider the exchange rate. Right now, the exchange rate for euro is $1.25 per euro. And in the previous video, I showed that if the inflation between the two countries, if the inflations of the two countries are different, then there would be a change of prices, and that's gonna change the shape of export and import, and the demand supply of the foreign currency, and then the exchange rate of the foreign currency. Okay, so in short, when inflation is difference between the two countries, the exchange rate would move. So right here you see the euro inflation is 3% and the dollar inflation is 6%. So that means US price increases faster than the eurozone. And which currency would get depreciated? It should be US dollar. It's always the country with higher inflation gets its home currency depreciated. And in contrast, the euro would appreciate. All right, so we can calculate the exchange rates, and for the next 3 years, based on that, we can basically calculate all the cash flows, convert the euros into dollars. Okay, so here is what we do. All right, I just opened up an Excel file, and here is the year number from year 0 all the way to year 3. And in the first year, the investment is a negative 600 euros, and it becomes 200, 500, 300 in the next 3 years. Okay, and I'm going to format this number with a currency, and this should be actually euros. Okay, I'm gonna right click on it. I will see the format sales. It's right here, currency, the symbol. I want it to be euro. Okay, just bear with me. I need to find the euro sign. Okay, right here. Alrighty. So once I have the euro sign, once I have this euro cash flows layout, then I need to work on the free cash flows in US dollars. And I definitely will need to use the exchange rates. So right here, the cash flows are in euros. So this is a euro cash flow, as you can see. And I also need to work on the exchange rate for euros. And then I will get the cash flows in US dollars. Okay, US dollar cash flow. So right now the exchange rate is 1.25, I believe. It's right here, 1.25. So that means for a euro, you can buy the same stuff. If you have $1.25, you can buy the same stuff as you could in the Eurozone. So this is called a purchasing power parity, all right? You can think about a burger. You buy a burger at $1.25, and then you sell the burger, and then you convert the dollar into euro, get €1, and still buy the same kind of burger. So it's so the $1.25 has the same purchasing power in the U.S. as it is in Eurozone. All right, back to this calculation. So right now the exchange rate is $1.25 per euro. Okay, and when the two economies have different inflation, let me put it here. U.S. inflation is 6%, and the euro inflation is 3%. Okay, so how can I calculate the exchange rate in the next year? So it is pretty easy to do. So you just use the dollar multiplied by the dollar inflation, log it, and then divided by the euro. Okay, €1 is per euro, and €1 multiplied by the euro inflation. Okay, since this is per euro, I have a €1 right here. One is can be skipped, so I just use 1 plus the euro inflation here. Have it locked. Alright, so this is the euro exchange rate in the next year, or in year 1. It would be 1.29. So this is actually euro appreciation, and the dollar depreciate against the euros. And then I can just drag it down after I lock it. As you can see, since US inflation keeps higher than the euro inflation, so the dollar will keep going down against the euro, and the euro value will keep up against the dollar. And then I do the conversion. I will use the euro amount multiplied by the exchange rate. So 600 euros would be equalized to 750 US dollars. Okay, and then I just drag it all the way. And I also have the US cost of capital, and that is 15%. To get the NPV, all right, to get the NPV in US dollar, okay, in US dollar, I just simply use the NPV function, and I know the rate should be the US rate, and the cash flows should be the US dollars. And once again, for the NPV function of Excel, I need to add cash flow 0 outside the NPV box. Okay, so this is my NPV in US dollars. And if I want to get the IRR, the internal rate of return in US dollar, actually it comes out as a percentage. I should say the IRR based on the dollar cash flow, okay, based on the US dollar cash flow. And this is also super duper easy to do. You just simply use the IRR function, and then that's it. And this 32.2% is greater than the 15% of your cost of capital. This is a good project. All right, so this is something I would ask out of you, but you have another way to do it, and that other way is also required. So you can calculate the NPV in euro. All right. If you want to calculate the NPV in euro, you don't really have the cost, okay, the cost of a capital in euro term, okay. You don't have the euro cost of a capital. You don't know what that is. All right. In order to get the NPV, as you can see, the first thing to put there is a rate. All right. So it really does not matter, since in the previous chapter, actually it was in chapter 11, we learned about the nominal term and the real term for cash flows and for cost of capital. So the cost of capital here are nominal, and you can get the real cost of capital. Okay, so let's say for the real US cost of capital, well, just use R, okay, to stand for cost of capital, and we have done this in previous chapters many times. So the cost of capital for the US is the 15% minus the US inflation. All right, so without inflation considered, the real return or the real cost of capital in the US is 9%. And what about the real euro cost of capital or the euro rate? It should be exactly as the US interest rate. And this is consistent with the international Fisher effect. Okay, international Fisher effect. So international Fisher effect is saying that the two real rate of two countries should be equal to each other. All right, this should be equal to each other. So what happens if the real rate in the US gets higher? What happens if this is a 10% and this is 8%? If that happens, that means it is more rewarding to invest in the US than in the Eurozone. The money would go to US, leave the Eurozone, so there would be a scarcity of capital in Eurozone. Then the interest rate would increase. So there's less supply of capital or investment in the Eurozone, so the rate would increase. If there is too much supply of money in the US, then the US rate would go down. Just like what's happening with the quantitative easing, there's too much money floating around, so the interest rate would get down. So eventually this would converge. And vice versa, if US has a lower rate, 2%, and the Eurozone has a higher rate of 18%, then what would happen is our money would go to the Eurozone because their investment return is much higher. As a result, there is less and less investment, less and less money available in the US, then the bank has to increase the interest rate to attract all the investment, and this rate would go up. And since more and more money get poured into the Eurozone, then there creates an oversupply of the money, and that's going to drive down the interest rate of the region down. So eventually, these two countries or two economies would end up with the same real rate return. Okay, although the inflation could be different, but the real return should be the same. With that being said, we can easily calculate the cost of capital in the Eurozone in nominal term. So it should be the Euro real return, the real cost of capital plus the Euro inflation. So this is the nominal term. Alrighty, if we calculate the NPV, so we should use the European rate, which is this 12% based on the Fisher effect we developed. We are assuming the real return of the two countries are the same. If not the same, then the international capital movement will eventually make it converge. So, and for the cash flows, this time I'm gonna choose all the Euro cash flows and then add the last one as cash flow 0. So this is my Euro NPV, and if I want to calculate the IRR based on the euro, it is also pretty easy to do. IRR is always the easiest part. You just use the IRR function and then select all the right here, all the cash flows here. So that's your euro IRR.